best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we're here to do another character spotlight. These guys have, thanks for joining me guys.
No problem.
These guys have zero, zilch, nada idea of what we're talking about today, besides the fact that it is a character, and that it is likely to be someone that we're all more familiar with and have more to say about than Michael Eddington. Thank you very much. Today, we're going to talk about probably no one's favorite character. Now, there might be somebody that absolutely loves this character, and I wish that I could say I love this character more than I do, and the only reason I don't is because they never did nearly enough with this guy. Today, we're going to talk about Chakotay. Chakotay. Today we're going to do a little spotlight on the first officer from Voyager.
Oh, God.
And let's start with Brandon. Brandon, what was your take always? What was always your take on Chakotay?
Chakotay was kind of a guy who felt a little bit emasculated to me. He could have done so much more. He was a Maquis, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And there were only a couple times where he really brought it and really kind of took Janeway to task. Most of the time he's like, well, you know, Janeway, this. And he could have been like, no, don't do this. You're not supposed to. He kind of felt not dumbed down, but just not as aggressive as he could have been.
Yeah.
What do you think of Chakotay?
The word bland comes to mind, I guess. I don't know. He just seemed, he seemed to have like one mode a lot of the time. He never really moved out of that.
Kind of one note.
Yeah, one note, yes.
Yeah. I would say that my favorite Chakotay episode was Shattered, and that tells you how much they didn't do with the guy, because it's not exactly a character piece.
No.
But it was a neat premise, and we focused. He was our point of view character. We followed him throughout that, and he was super likable in that episode. And I guess his prevailing character trait was always what? Grace under fire? Is that like the best we can do?
Probably,
obviously he should have been, as Brandon was saying, maybe a little bit more extreme in a maybe even sort of an ends justifies the means kind of philosophy where, whatever it takes. And given that they were trying to get back home, at least early on, it would have made a lot of sense and create a lot of drama. And of course, we're past that TNG thing of we can't have characters. Actually, we can't have infighting anymore. We can't actually have any character conflict. That wouldn't it have made a lot of sense if he was a little bit more like Ransom?
Yes, that would have made it. If we'd have gotten that character out of Chakotay, I could have seen. I could have seen that, but I think part of where they were coming from with this was that Chakotay was now a fish out of water, and he really wasn't sure, because the main cause they were fighting for was now 70,000 light years across the galaxy.
That's a great point, yeah.
So that
kind of passion would be gone.
But he would still be like, I want to get home, as anybody would, but he, like you said, he would have been more under any means type of person to get home, whereas Janeway was soft on that. She'd already caused damage. She felt responsible. Chakotay in no way felt responsible. Here he was in the middle of the Badlands, and all of a sudden, boom, here he is, doesn't know where he is, and Starfleet shows up.
What do you think? Should he have been more ruthless? And I guess I'm mostly kind of just saying that because of the fact that he was Maquis, and they, of course, were willing to do whatever they needed to for the cause. But then you're making a great point. Now the cause is different, and given his Native American philosophies, which of course immediately makes him not exactly the stereotypical Maquis, because the essence of his belief system is almost a pacifistic.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Almost pacifist.
What do you think?
They always
was I right about
to
that?
portray him as a man of principle and stuff, I guess. But,
right.
I don't know, the way the other Maquis, like we saw in Deep Space Nine, were portrayed, they were always definitely...
And some of the Maquis even at the beginning
even
of
Voyager, too.
Taurus, she was feisty for a while, and then we saw Seska, who was a spy.
Like that thing with the...
And of course, and again, she obviously doesn't count as let's compare Maquis because
Right.
she's there for a
But
different
yeah,
reason.
but
Exactly.
Taurus was the thing with the planet with the transporter, where they were trying to Janeway didn't what was it? She didn't want to take the technology. something
Oh,
like
you
that.
could only transport so far when you were in relation to the planet because of the resonance of the planet. That one.
Yes, but they didn't know that or something. I don't
Yeah, and
remember the
she
episode.
transported to the faraway area, and then she came back and was
Yes.
like, "How is that even possible?"
Yeah, but she was wanting to take that technology, even though Janeway and Chakotay both.
Oh yeah. So there was some of that, but he gets obviously you start to kind of forget that he's Maquis.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
as it goes along, it'd be really easy for anybody. I would submit that you could get into that show midstream, say third, fourth season, and until somebody brought it up, you could go episodes and episodes before you even realized that it was an integrated crew.
Well, you wouldn't even know that it was an integrated
Right.
crew.
You'd
For all
wonder why
intents and
some
purposes.
of you might, if you were really paying attention, you might wonder why some of them had a different rank pip thing, but that'd be about
Yeah.
it.
Oh, I never. It shows how much I paid attention. I didn't
Yeah.
even
You're
realize.
real
The little-
perceptive, Brandon.
Little line versus the little dot.
I'll tell you what
Yeah.
though. There was some great moments with the Chakotay character
Of course.
in false realities. For instance, the episode where the Doctor is pulled 1,000 years after on the planet that's diametrically opposed to the two factions,
Yeah.
and they pull the Doctor, and we see Chakotay.
Living Witness.
Living
Witness.
Witness, yeah.
That's one of my favorite episodes.
Which I should mention is a Brand Fuller script.
Oh, really?
But yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's good. I didn't
Now,
realize
since
that.
he's show running the new show, every time somebody brings up one of the episodes, I feel the need to tell them that was who did that.
Well, look at Chakotay and Janeway in that one. They are take no prisoners, just do what it needs to be done. And
Well,
that's,
right.
it's fascinating. And ultimately, I thought that was a more fascinating Chakotay character than... And
You wouldn't have wanted to watch 7 seasons of that, and of course, it was this really extreme version.
Yeah, those were like
Well, no.
horrible people. That'd be like watching 7 seasons of Nazis or something.
Maybe
That
not.
would even be worse than Mirror Universe. I would say. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, that the whole point of that. I know you know this, but the whole point of that was rewriting history and trying to make these people. And you know what's funny about it is when I saw that as a kid, I always thought that seemed like really far fetched. That nobody, even in that culture, would believe, even if they were told that forever, when they saw that, would believe that anybody could really be like that. And then, like, sadly, as I've grown up, it just doesn't seem as ridiculous anymore.
No.
And I
No,
hate
right?
that.
Right, it doesn't. But the main point, while I love that characterization of Chakotay for that one-off episode, if he had been a little bit closer to that and less the way we got him throughout the series, it might have been
Here's the thing,
ultimately more
But
interesting.
I'm going to argue with you and say that would be going too far, because what we needed was a Janeway and a Chakotay that, and you have this to a degree. I think Chakotay's, character-wise, his best episode is probably Scorpion. But when you look at when you look at episodes like that where they actually are at opposing on opposing sides, you wanted more of that kind of friction, but from two people that were willing to compromise sometimes and just came at things from a different perspective. And I think that we should have just brought what his perspective is more to the forefront and just had these two leaders that made sense to be leaders together that both just disagreed a lot and have them butt heads a lot, so that you and really compare and contrast them and have a lot of mirroring of those characters. And with the playing with, maybe they would have a romance thing like they were doing early on, it would have made all that a lot more interesting.
Right.
Speaking of romances, I don't remember where the 7 of 9 thing came out of.
It came out of, as a lot of things do, a holodeck episode.
Yes.
They wrote that in at the last minute, like a few episodes before the end of season 7. They just threw that in there, and if you're watching it in succession, it still sort of comes out of nowhere. I mean, because basically it's okay. It still comes out of nowhere because she sees him as somebody that's maybe compatible, and then she's pretending to date this version of the holodeck so that she can practice
It's kind
being
of creepy.
social. Yeah, a little bit. It's got its charming moments until you remember that he's a hologram.
Right.
But then when they actually start dating, it still feels like it sort of comes a little bit out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of that
it
was...
did to me, too.
And a lot of that was... And Sarah and I have talked about this in previous episodes of this show, but a lot of that came from... Braga created her to be killed off. She was supposed to be this really tragic character, and they decided that they couldn't do that because she was too popular. And I would assume
really?
I would assume that was the
Wow.
reason. But Braga intended for her to be this really tragic character that was never meant to survive, and so that's why they sort of pseudo play that out in the future in Endgame, and then they backtrack it and keep her alive. But that's why you had the Tombstone thing in Endgame.
Well, they did it in Timeless too. They killed her in Timeless. And they had to use her cranial implant when they found Voyager on the frozen planet.
Yeah.
So they kind of did that a couple of times at least. And Timeless I know is one of my favorites, and I know you're not, because one of the well, I know you're not as huge a fan of Timeless as I am, and partly
It's not great.
I can understand why, because some of the best episodes in Voyager never happened, and this one also didn't happen.
Well, and it speaks to your point when you've got a character that some of his best moments aren't even really him, or some other version of him, or
It's like,
changing
it's like,
the
we got to
timeline.
do all this cool stuff with him, but we can't upset the status quo, so we're going to roll it back at the end of the episode.
Right.
Yeah, and so he just needed to be allowed to evolve a little bit. Let me ask you guys this: do you think that, as I kind of do, that Beltran was just kind of shafted, and they ought to have given him more to do? I don't think it was Beltran's fault. Is the point I made?
Oh
Yeah, I
no,
don't think
no,
it
no,
was
no, no!
either.
I don't think it was his fault either. I think I'm agreeing with you, and
Like, I just don't think that he was challenged enough as an actor.
Right. And did he get really, like, angry and stuff near the end of the series?
Well,
Like,
I'm not
like,
sure. I've never looked into that.
I've heard that he, like, was, like, speaking out against the show and stuff while
Oh,
it was
wow.
on and things.
I had not
so
heard
you
that.
so you had the
Yeah.
so you had that T'Pol situation.
Yeah, it was like Jolene.
That Jolene, thank you, Jolene Blaylock. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I really did actually appreciate the stuff where they brought more of Chakotay's heritage into it, like when he went on his
I don't
spirit
think they ever
quest
did
and-
enough with that.
Well,
and
my
it,
No, but I
problem
it felt
appreciated
hokey.
It
sometimes.
wasn't real. It was fake. It was like a made-up white people idea of what Native American culture is.
Yes,
and
but
stuff.
that-
It wasn't
but
like
I-
an actual
And wouldn't it
Right,
be cool if it
real
was,
Native American.
or even if they made
nation.
one. Well, okay, I was gonna say this, and now I'm gonna backtrack because I think I'm wrong. I was gonna say even if they made one up, it would be cool if they had like a consistent heritage that they really built. Sort of like a species, right? Where like we're like you really and look look into other cultures and put it together and make it feel like something real. But then what would be the point of that in Star Trek, which is supposed to be the history of the future? You'd use a real thing,
Right.
wouldn't you?
Right, and to clarify what I'm saying, I would have appreciated it more had they given us more of that and more of a reality of that type of thing, and that would have been nice. And
Are you
that's
just saying conceptually it was kind of a cool idea? Is
yes,
that what you're saying?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Because I always thought the Spirit Walk stuff was kind of hokey. Like, I just never really bought it.
right, but conceptually, yes, that's exactly where I'm coming from. It would have been nice to get some real gromber, to use a Nausicaan term, some real gromber there, and kind of some bite to what he's talking about. We really never got it. The best we got was his dream catcher, which turned in his room, that turned out to be a map of the universe that was never
It's
really
so silly. I mean, the thing for me is, if you're gonna do a thing like that, don't you need some sort of an explanation? I mean, like with in a universe that's supposed to be based on the one we live in. Again, based on, at least Earthwise, the history we have already.
Right.
Once you get into something like with that spiritual stuff, it's got to come from a place. It ought to be like DS9, where you have at least an inkling that there's some kind of scientific explanation for it.
or at the very least,
Or was there, and I'm forgetting?
There
Because that was
was.
early
They
stuff.
did
Was there?
that.
Okay.
They had that whole
Remind
thing
me,
where it
'cause
was like these aliens from the Delta
was
Quadrant
tuned
where
out.
they're sky gods and all that stuff.
Okay,
and,
well,
yeah.
it's still always
Which I
seemed
didn't
hokey to me,
like.
but
I'm like,
it's at least
you
better
don't-
than
I mean,
I
because
thought
it
was.
felt like, I don't know, it felt like they were
Well,
trying
you
to
were-
explain Native American spirituality as like an alien science fiction story or something to me. But
And the trap you fall into, of course, is that you end up with everything being explained away in exactly the same way, because you had that with Ardra and being the devil in a lot of different cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you also had that when Janeway supposedly died and she met her father, but it was just an alien being parasite that was convincing her to go towards the light.
Yeah, but I don't think that's explaining anything so much as just an isolated alien race that uses that as a way. Like, that's not
True.
the same thing. The Voth dinosaur thing is kind of like that.
See, I wish
You know what I
they
mean? Like,
could
why don't we have
expounded
dinosaurs?
upon
They
that.
left.
Yeah.
That was kind of ultimately
Except
interesting
they
to
kind of
me.
took
They
it from
didn't do
Doctor
enough.
Who a little bit.
Did they really?
Yeah, the Silurians and stuff. But that's kind of what it reminded me of.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't
but-
know old Who,
Yeah.
so I
But
didn't
I-
realize that. But
I can see where you're coming from. You
I do
wanted
like
something.
that episode.
You wanted
I like it
something
too.
a little more tangible, like where.
Well, I said that initially. I forgot that there was an explanation for it. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen
Yeah.
that.
Well, but even still, it like you said, it's a little bit hokey. Whereas Tim Russ, Tuvok's character, his what you could consider spirituality is all based, steeped in the Vulcan traditions and science.
Well, you
You
can't
know?
give Voyager too much credit for that.
No, you can't. But at the same time, it is coming from somewhere, and you understand that it's coming from somewhere. And he does give you like Neelix is usually a way for him to make an expository statement about where this is coming from, and kind of give us information on that. Whereas we never really get that from Chakotay. He kind of skims the surface.
I just don't think he was ever fully drawn, and I think that he could have been. I feel like what he is what Riker would have been if Frakes hadn't been allowed to, and man, I forget if he like kind of pushed his way into this or what exactly happened, but if Frakes hadn't been allowed to bring more of himself into that role, he would have potentially been that kind of stale, stagnant character like Chakotay sort of ended up being, and they didn't allow Beltran to be Beltran enough. Is kind of.
I think you're right about Frakes. I think he did. Like he came back from after season 1.
Oh yeah, with the
and
beard,
stuff.
he's just like,
He
I'm
just
going
had
with it.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of his, like charm and wit and the way he, and his love for women and all that stuff came from Frakes, and was stuff that he was such a two-dimensional nothing character. But he was
Right.
completely wooden before that, and I feel like Chakotay kind of was Riker if he never grew out of that.
Right.
Okay, here are a couple of examples that I'm thinking of where we got a little bit of character development. We saw something of Chakotay's inner self, and one where we didn't and we could have is the one where Janeway and Chakotay get stranded on the planet because of the virus, and that they meet the
Right.
monkey. They just missed a huge opportunity there. What was the name of that episode? I'm drawing a total blank.
It's not
on it.
coming right to
I don't
me
remember.
either.
It's
But
the second to
but-
last episode of season 2.
right, yeah.
Well, they missed a huge
In
opportunity
what
there.
way? What should they have done? Gotten them together? I mean, all that is kind of a relationship episode.
But
Like
he was being a Maquis. He's used to the rough and tumble and living out there, and
Right.
he just seems way too Starfleet. I'm going to use what I have available to me from Starfleet rather than using the salt of the earth person.
Oh, I disagree with that entirely. You're just not remembering the episode. Yeah,
He
I mean,
made a
it's-
boat.
He made a boat. Like he went
made a
out
boat,
and grabbed
yeah.
things
He
and
made a
used what was
bathtub.
around. Like
I wanted more of that.
like why? You
I would have dug a two-parter on
did
that.
you
whole
really?
thing.
That,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like a two-part episode to me. What did you want him to like make a coconut radio?
Yes,
and,
exactly.
like,
A coconut radio.
Yeah,
with
is
a- with a- yeah,
He's a
exactly.
professor.
Okay, so maybe.
Adam got that reference.
No, I got it too. I just went
No,
past
I'm
all
just-
the
I'm just-
violent things.
That's the Captain America Avengers joke. He got that reference.
Okay.
He felt the need to tell everyone he knew that reference. Anyway, but
Okay, an area where I think
Yeah.
they did do well was the episode in which Chakotay is himself. He ends up in enemy territory, and he's convinced by the whole holographic display that he needs to be supporting these people in this encampment, and that the other people are the enemies.
I haven't seen that in a long time, but I always felt like that could have been anybody.
Which one was that? Was that Nemesis?
It may have been.
I forget now.
He's in the alien encampment, and he gets a liking to these kids, and it may have been able to have been anybody, but I feel like Chakotay brought more of himself into that particular role.
And it turns out the people that look like humans are the bad guys, and people that look like the Predator
Right,
are the good
we're
guys.
the good guys,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
I felt not particularly moved by his speech at the end, but I felt like I got more of what the real Chakotay was right at the end of that episode.
In what way? I mean, what did it give you
Well,
exactly?
it was just kind of how he felt he had grown accustomed, and it showed that he was kind of, once he got set in a way, he was almost unwilling to change it. And I felt that was more of the true spirit of Chakotay.
That's also Janeway. I mean, like, what sets him apart from anybody else in that show?
I don't know if this.
I'm saying, I wouldn't call that the essence of Chakotay. If it was, it's the essence of like a third of that cast.
Maybe so, but that's
Right?
where
Like-
I think that's where Chakotay should have been, and maybe some of the other characters who we're not talking about should have been.
The bottom
at
line
that.
for me with Chakotay is I can come up with pretty good descriptors for nearly every other character in that show. And Chakotay is a little bit of a dice roll.
Yeah.
I think. I mean,
He's
I
a
don't know if
little
that's
soft.
I don't know if that's fair.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, how would you describe that character?
as Janeway's enforcer. Surrogate.
Like I said, you know, he was at his best when they were at odds.
It's true.
You know,
It's true.
and then I sometimes felt like he was, you know, when he was coming from a place of, because usually it was Janeway, you're going too far, which again is weird because he was Maquis.
Yeah.
I guess to a degree, but then it is kind of, if they had played with that, it's an interesting reversal where it's like, look, if I can hold to my principles. Being who I am and where I came from and being in the Maquis and stuff, you ought to be able to, while we're not around Starfleet, trying to get back, you ought to be able to hold to yours. And then we could have questioned a little bit, kind of that Q thing from early TNG, how prepared are we really to go out into the galaxy and deal with these unknown things? Of course, you need to make the Delta Quadrant a lot more unknown, a lot scarier than it really seemed while we kept talking about how different and scary it was. But you see what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, he certainly has his moments. Do you have a favorite Chakotay episode?
No.
No? Wow.
I like the holographic Chakotay and worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love worst case scenario, just in general.
You mentioned the episode Shattered earlier. I think that's a really good example of just what the show could do and what it could do with its characters.
Well, I think it's a good example of how Robert Beltran could carry an episode if you just frickin' let him. I mean, he didn't get nearly enough of his own episodes. I don't know if it's. I would have to go look at the numbers. I don't know if he got fewer than anybody else.
Yeah.
But it sure feels like it.
As the show went on, I think they gave him less and less to do too.
But part of that might have been they weren't getting along with Beltran.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was that he felt like he wasn't getting enough to do, and then he complained. So they're like, well, fine then. We're going to give you even less, that kind of a situation.
That's
Well, it's
just
weird
making a
because-
worse situation, bad situation.
The
Worse.
worst case scenario.
yeah.
But the problem is you have a few
Insert
characters
episode
that
title
have
here.
that problem.
Yeah.
You know, because as time went on, we gave Kim less to do, and
Oh God, here you go.
And then he complained about it on camera in an episode.
that's true.
It's like you can't have too many captains.
And of course, a lot of folks have complained that
They were
toward
gonna
the end of that
fire
show,
him, I
they were,
think.
yeah.
But he was named People's one
Right.
of his sexiest men or something like that.
Right.
Was that it?
Yep,
Yeah.
that was it.
Oh wow, I had not heard
But
that.
no, they were going to get rid of him instead of Cass. Cass was supposed
He had
to
a
stay.
bad work ethic, I've heard.
Well, that's the whole reason
Yeah.
that he gets sick in Scorpion, and then miraculously they're able to fix it with nanoprobes right after
Yeah.
that.
But
But yeah, well, any final thoughts? We're going to go ahead and end off, I think. But I meant to bring up the episode with the mini board collective because I always thought he was pretty great in that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That with the
I think that's not
I
called
remember-
collective, is it?
I think it is
That's-
called Collective.
Is it, or is that
Yeah.
a later
yeah.
one?
With the people that are liberated.
Well, then
and
what's
stuff,
the
yeah.
what's the one? I'm mixing episode titles. What's the one? The initial Board Kit episode called?
That might be Collective.
I thought that was
That's
collective. Yeah. See, so then I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
not
you're
but,
not wrong.
But anyway, but you see what I'm saying.
Yes.
Our collective knowledge is lacking here.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know that gave me a real great sense of his ideology and worldview,
Right.
but he got to show some acting chops, and we got to see him, sympathize with these people and care about them, and through him we got this kind of other side of what the benefits of a collective could be, and why it's
Yeah.
maybe not inherently a bad thing, and it's a complex kind of idea to to discuss. But again, I don't know if it was because of Chakotay.
You are making me want to watch Voyager all the way through again. It's been a while since I've done that, and I should, just to get a better feel for those characters. I feel like I used to kind of like Chakotay a little bit more than I do right now, and I just really wasn't thinking about it.
I just
and
find it
that's
hard not to
why.
be completely indifferent toward the character
Yeah.
most of the time. And I mean, how much of his dialogue is just expository?
Yeah.
Well, he kind of could be just about anybody in almost any situation in the show.
And you needed him to challenge Janeway because of all the times that Janeway seems to go really overboard.
Yeah.
At times, Q did a better job of that.
Did you have anything else to say about Chakotay?
I can't think of anything.
All right, well,
But you're right about Robert Beltran. I've seen him in other things outside of Voyager, and he's done a good job, like the movie Eating Raoul and stuff. So I think it was just they didn't give him enough to do.
it just feels like nobody got excited about that character.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that first couple seasons, everybody seemed kind of dull and dry on that show.
Right.
And some of them grew out of it, and some of them
Right.
didn't so much.
Yeah.
Finding their own.
Yeah.
Everybody, thanks as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next time with another exciting episode of Ask the Treksperts. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Adam.
And I'm Brandon.
See you next time.